Have you ever found yourself completely burying yourself in work just to ignore a personal issue? Or maybe you feel like you really understand your own mind, but you just can't ever seem to feel at peace. Well, if that sounds familiar, I am so glad you're here, because today we are diving into a topic that touches practically every single one of us. We're talking about emotional avoidance. Avoiding emotional pain is a deeply, profoundly human instinct, and yet it's also incredibly misunderstood. So in this explainer, we're going to use some fascinating research and clinical insights to break down what emotional avoidance actually is, why we do it, and most importantly, how we can gently begin to change it. Let's get right into it. So, what does emotional avoidance actually look like in the real world? Usually when we hear that phrase, we picture something really obvious, right? We imagine someone physically crossing their arms, totally shutting down, or stubbornly refusing to talk about their feelings while the room is practically on fire. But here's the thing. While completely shutting down is definitely one form of avoidance, for most of us, the reality is a whole lot more subtle. In fact, it's often completely invisible to the outside world.
It is truly wild how everyday and relatable these behaviors actually are. Sometimes emotional avoidance just looks like staying busy from the absolute second you wake up until you collapse into bed at night. Or maybe it's overthinking and intellectualizing your feelings, analyzing your emotions logically so you don't have to actually feel them. It could be chronic people-pleasing, constantly focusing on others to dodge your own needs. Honestly, it can even look like conventional success, like working crazy long hours. Or let's be real, sometimes it's just endlessly scrolling on your phone or dropping a perfectly timed joke to deflect a really serious moment. The absolute most crucial thing to understand here is that the common thread isn't the behavior itself, it's the purpose behind the behavior. Emotional avoidance is a learned, often totally automatic pattern where we're trying to escape, suppress, control, numb, or prevent an unwanted emotional experience. It doesn't actually matter if you're working a 12-hour shift or binge-watching a TV show. What matters is what that behavior is trying to protect you from. You might actually be someone who feels things very deeply, but over time, you've just learned that certain emotions feel entirely unsafe.
Section 1. Why we avoid emotions.
Before we go any further, we absolutely have to normalize this. If you struggle with emotional avoidance, you are not broken. You are just human. Evolution has literally wired us to move away from pain. Think about it. If you touch a hot stove, your physical instinct is to yank your hand away instantly. When something hurts emotionally, our minds do the exact same thing. We look for the fastest way to make the discomfort stop. And here is the great paradox. In the short term, it works. Distracting yourself or numbing out gives you an immediate drop in distress. But the reality? Relief is not healing. Over time, avoiding an emotion completely prevents us from processing it. It's ironic, really. The harder we work to avoid our feelings, the more power those feelings end up having over our lives.
To see just how deeply ingrained this can get, we can look at some incredible research by Lind and colleagues on childhood stress. They discovered that a lot of people grow up in what they call an emotional avoidance culture. Imagine growing up in a house where expressing sadness or anger was met with dismissal, conflict, or just dead silence. To survive that kind of environment, kids adapt. They quickly learn to suppress their needs, hide their vulnerability, and pack their feelings away because they're taught that those feelings are dangerous.
Which leads to this genuinely heartbreaking reality, backed up by research from Kahn and Garrison. Logically, you'd think that when people are in high distress, like dealing with severe anxiety, they would reach out and talk about it more. But the research shows the exact opposite. People experiencing high distress actually self-disclose less. Why? Because if you are spending all of your energy trying to avoid a painful internal feeling, talking about it totally ruins that effort. Expressing the emotion means actually experiencing it, so we end up falling silent right when we need support the absolute most.
Section 2. The avoidance trap.
So how do these totally natural protective instincts end up turning against us? Well, a short-term coping mechanism can mutate into a long-term psychological loop really quickly. Let's walk through this self-reinforcing cycle. Step 1. A trigger hits, and an uncomfortable emotion bubbles up. Step 2. You use an avoidance strategy. Maybe you start mindlessly scrolling. Step 3. Boom, you get that temporary relief. But Step 4 is where the trap snaps shut. Because you avoided the feeling, you miss the chance to learn that you could actually survive it. Research by Spitzen points out that chronic avoidance drastically lowers our emotion regulation self-efficacy. In plain English, it kills our confidence in our ability to handle our own distress. We start believing we literally can't handle our feelings, making us even more terrified of them the next time around.
Now, I want to be super clear here. Not all avoidance is bad. Hoffman's research highlights that avoidance isn't inherently evil. It's all about how and why you're using it. For example, delaying a really heated conversation until you've had a chance to calm down, that is a perfectly healthy adaptive coping strategy. It's a strategic retreat. The trap only happens when we rely on chronic disengagement, like complete denial or permanent escape, as our main way of dealing with life. That is what keeps us stuck.
Section 3. Building emotional tolerance.
Okay, so how do we actually get out of this trap? The good news is you don't have to just force yourself to get over it, and you definitely don't have to start enjoying being anxious or sad. Healing is really just about building a brand new muscle, step by step. We call this new skill emotional tolerance. It's simply the ability to experience a difficult emotion without immediately trying to escape, suppress, or eliminate it. It doesn't mean resigning yourself to suffering. It just means recognizing that emotions, even the terrifyingly intense ones, are temporary. They're like weather patterns just passing through. They can be managed, and you can absolutely survive them.
And the science totally backs up our ability to change these habits. Research by Ader introduces this fascinating idea called the prepared reflex. Because avoidance is usually an automatic impulse, we can intentionally pre-plan alternative responses to our triggers. It's basically an if-then plan. For example, if I feel overwhelmed at work, then instead of opening Instagram, I will take 3 deep breaths. By practicing this, we can quite literally override our brain's automatic instinct to run away.
And you don't have to guess at how to do this retraining. There are some incredibly effective evidence-based frameworks built specifically for this. Things like cognitive behavioral therapy, dialectical behavior therapy, and acceptance and commitment therapy. These approaches are fantastic because they don't try to teach you how to magically avoid pain. Instead, they help you move off autopilot so you can start responding intentionally in ways that actually align with the life you want to build.
Section 4. Finding support and healing.
Look, here's a gentle reality check. Unlearning years, maybe even decades, of emotional avoidance is rarely something you should expect to do entirely on your own. These patterns run deep, and they kept you safe when you didn't have any other tools. The very first step to finding healing is a massive shift in mindset. We have to replace our self-judgment with genuine curiosity. We have to stop blaming ourselves for being too much or for relying on these coping mechanisms. Instead, ask yourself, what is this behavior trying to protect me from? Why did I even need this armor in the first place?
That curiosity-driven approach is exactly the philosophy over at Edward, Jenny & Associates. They are a psychology practice with over 29 years of clinical experience. You know, traditional talk therapy is great for gaining an intellectual understanding of yourself, but sometimes it misses the deeper roots. Edward, Jenny & Associates uses a unique deep insight model, utilizing advanced tools like Rorschach ink blots to uncover the unconscious patterns that are really driving your thoughts and emotions. It's a highly collaborative process designed to help you figure out exactly why you are the way you are. Because, let's be honest, you've probably done the work. You've read the books, you've listened to explainers just like this one. But you deserve to move past just understanding your avoidance on an intellectual level. You absolutely deserve the peace that comes from truly knowing yourself, finally letting go of that self-blame, and just feeling at home in your own skin. So I want to leave you with one final thought. Are you ready to stop spinning your wheels? If you recognized yourself in these subtle patterns of avoidance today, and you're just tired of repeating the exact same cycles, please know you do not have to navigate this alone. I highly encourage you to reach out to Edward, Jenny & Associates and book a free discovery call. It could be the absolute best first step toward replacing all that internal struggle with genuine, calm confidence. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer today. Keep learning, keep getting curious, and ask yourself this: what could your life look like if you finally stopped running from yourself? See you next time.